Ex-Trump supporters. What was the last straw? There's a horse loose in the hospital. John Mulaney. Kid Gorgeous at Radio City. His act and how he broke it down really put into perspective how ridiculous everything that came out of Trump's mouth was. Some people, when you say bad things about the horse, will get mad. Those are the ones who open the door for the horse. And when you ask them why they opened the door for the horse, they say, well, the hospital was inefficient. Quote. And that, folks, is the mindset of the average MAGA guy, deciding that the best way to fix a problem is to let a wild animal run roughshod over it. Just found TT. Personally, I was in the okay, I'm going to give him a chance because that's the right thing to do. I'm not going to judge someone before researching them camp. It didn't take long before I realized this dude is clueless. By that I mean before the end of my lunch break on the day he announced his campaign. I didn't know anything about him before. I never felt the need to read the news concerning him, having gone back and seen the old news stories about him. Can't say I would blame anyone for not giving him a chance. However, my father was a full-on Donnie supporter ever since the escalator incident. On occasion he would admit things were bad, basically whenever he heard Donnie giving a speech. But my dad is a bit of a single-issue voter and kept supporting Donnie and ignoring everything bad. The responses to the recent riot seem to have turned him into a Sanders supporter somehow. I'm not sure how he skipped Biden and went all the way to Sanders. But if I never have to hear my dad say Uncle Donnie again, then I'm happy. The Trump to radical pipeline isn't uncommon. A lot of people supported Trump because they were sick of the disgusting status quo in our current politics. Any change seemed to be good change, and Trump seemed to be the only non-status quo option after Sanders was backstabbed by the Dems the first time. What was the escalator incident? This is a good day for George Floyd. He is smiling down upon us was what did it for me. I've been ambivalent for a while, liking certain things and disliking others. Was planning to abstain from the presidential part of the ballot, or write in. I might actually vote for Biden now instead. Please vote. Please do not skip it. Rich Ghetto 5.6k points 22 hours ago, edited 12 hours ago 7 My Christian grandparents totally did a 180 on their support for him very recently after he had that photo op while holding the Bible after tear-gassing protesters. My grandfather told me that if Jesus were in D.C. that day he would have been standing with the peaceful protesters and not with him. Edit. My first award. Thank you. I was frustrated when my grandfather supported Trump through all his scandals. But instead of saying, I told you so, I supported his change of view. Sometimes it takes longer for certain people to change, and I'm so glad he did. Yes. Oh my God, yes. I've been repeating this over and over and over. Jesus would have been leading peaceful protests. He said, love thy neighbor. He didn't say, love thy neighbor as long as they are the same skin color, cisgendered, and straight. He said, love thy neighbor. Full fucking stop. This is important. I'm not religious myself, but have been brought up around people who were Christians, and from what I understand the whole point of the Bible, Jesus, Christianity, etc. is to be a good person. And then there is also the fact that a place of worship is meant to be a safe place for people. He's doing almost everything he said was wrong with the government and running the country like it's a reality show starring him and his family. When you elect a reality show host to be president, the citizens end up playing Survivor. Oh, do I have a show for you. Our cartoon president. I had been a very stern Trump supporter since day one. Went to the rallies, bought the shirts, listened to Rush Limbaugh, etc. COVID-19 was the final straw. A friend of mine put it in a good way. At some point, we decided it was bad to listen to scientists and college-educated professionals. I had been leaning away for a while, and then he tweeted out, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. He's a fucking idiot. Yeah, I'm in the let's listen to scientists and educated professionals camp. I don't do my own dentistry. I don't even do my own car repair. I don't attempt to grind my own eyeglasses lenses. I do know some things about some subjects, but I sure as hell don't know more than the scientists and educated professionals about most things. I'd suggest that you take a critical eye to the media you consume. Limbaugh has been spreading clear lies for decades. The worst and most effective thing that conservatives have done is erode faith in media. I know people who won't believe something if it's on NPR but will believe Breitbart, which is such a bad site that Wikipedia will not allow them as a source. Scientists and educated professionals aren't perfect. I think people forget this. They will get things wrong, but they're better than those who know nothing about said subject. We really need to teach kids early on that science is a constantly evolving thing. What was true 20 years ago may not be true now. His response to the protests. I truly believe he has lost his fucking mind now. I'm curious to know your opinions before the protests. Looking back, do you think there were other things that should have raised these concerns? This is a genuine question. I'm not trying to rile you up. Jay Snagler 295 points 21 hours ago, edited 17 hours ago. I agree. Trump has been foreshadowed before and the end of his reign has never been good. I believe he will not leave his place as president silently, and will do everything in his power to disrupt and fight back against the public. I'm still taken aback that he referenced George Floyd's pleasure up above while talking about employment statistics. My opinion is that he's scared. When the COVID pandemic hit and started messing with the economy, he went into defensive mode because he knows a lot of the people who are majorly affected are his supporters. And now the protests have taken it even further and he's making himself look worse. Not me, but a family member. He's a staunch Catholic and firm Republican. What happened in Lafayette Park was what finally did it for him. Having federal agents literally assault peaceful protesters so he could walk across the street for a photo op where he waved around an upside-down Bible using a church as a prop was more than he could take. Respectfully, I genuinely don't understand, before the photo op incident, how anyone in their right minds can think he has a religious inclination. I will 100% admit I'm a half-ass Catholic at best, and much of religion is based on morality, of which he lacks. One prime example is his defrauding of a non-profit organization. How is it ever ethical to steal from charity? Even before that, how can you cheat on your wife and call yourself a devout Christian Catholic? My intentions are not to attack you or your family member. But where the heck is this notion coming from? Not just protesters, they assaulted the bishop of the church he posed in front of. Bronze Pug 5.2k points plus 22 hours ago, edited 6 hours ago. Co. 2 and 2. 4. First joined the Marine Corps and befriended a few minorities, and just talking with them and learning their experiences is what honestly changed my beliefs the most, especially my sergeant. A Hispanic dude. He loved to talk about politics just as much as I did. But he was a liberal and I wasn't. Which was fine actually, because we both were capable of talking and even disagreeing without it turning into an argument. We became good friends. Even though it was against the UCMJ, it was technically fraternizing due to our ranks. We're both out now and still talk. I'm incredibly thankful for the experience, honestly. It changed my total belief system for the better. I even attended a protest in Oakland the other week, where I got tear gassed and hit with a pepper ball, and have been to a couple smaller ones since. I'm proud of the progress I've made. Edit. Spelling. Edit. Apparently my comment about the UCM was confusing. Might be. I was taught the rule was you can hang it with other Marines 2 ranks above or 2 below. It's great that you're open to change and don't think that you just know it all by the time you're a young adult. I'm 75 and I learn something significant and new every single week. I read, pay attention, and remain open to ideas that I didn't have the wisdom to consider earlier. Congratulations, you have done something that too many do not. I'm proud of you too. Here is a reminder for current Trump supporters who might be on the fence, or not. When you actually cast your vote, it's just you and no one else there with you in the booth. If you're worried about what your family, friends, etc. will think if you tell them you're voting blue, then you can tell them whatever you need to. Just remember that come November, when the choice is literally in front of you on the actual ballot, it's up to you and nobody else. I voted for Hillary, and have a coworker who relentlessly hates her. She would debate you into the ground if you said you voted for her. So when I went into work after the election and she asked, I just said I went third party. I was so tired, I just didn't want a fight. I wouldn't say I supported him because I didn't vote in 2016. I didn't like my options. Already learned my lesson. No need for a lecture. When he was elected, I thought maybe he wouldn't be too bad, and honestly didn't give a shit about who the president was because it never seemed to tire him. Lean and Elmi Lolly SEEAMM 74 to 1 LATBEMTHE LLATLE turbines, and his overall anti-environment stance. Of course, his handling of the pandemic and George Floyd protests have fueled a hatred for him that I didn't know I was capable of having for a politician. All I can do to get rid of him is vote, and I'm making damn sure I do it this time. Fuck him. Honestly, I didn't support him in the slightest. Cried when I learned he was elected, etc. But I actually argued with a friend who was distraught about his win, saying that he probably wasn't going to be that bad. I feel terrible about that now. She was completely right. The most vulnerable people in our country have suffered terribly from his poor leadership, as have many, many others. And I was dismissive of that out of naive, unearned optimism for what I thought would be his respect for the office. I mostly avoided the news and politics because it was such a contentious subject. I defended Trump, saying, "No, but it's all bad. Clearly there must be some sort of misunderstanding. You're being too hard on him. The media just loves tearing people apart." One day, someone quoted some completely ludicrous, childish tweet of his, and, to prove they were exaggerating or taking things out of context, I looked for Trump on Twitter to find the context and actual quote. I was absolutely horrified. I learned a lot that day. I still read his Twitter feed regularly and continue to be impressed at how much pride he takes in being a completely horrible excuse for a human being. That's pretty much what I did. I'd read some quote of his taken from Twitter and think, no, that can't possibly be right. So I joined Twitter to check for myself. I still check, and I'm looking forward to my first and last tweet. You have become irrelevant. You're fired. Quote. His Twitter feed in general looks like a squirrel has had a seizure on his phone keyboard. Often, after hitting caps lock, I'm getting the feeling a lot of people who support him don't really look into what he says or does too often. There was a study done on actual positions taken by the Republican Party. It was on something like tax breaks for the rich and repealing medical assistance and the like. And a surprising number of people simply refused to believe that the party would have such positions. When confronted with the facts, or rather, a summary of the facts, they thought these are terrible positions. The party I supports has them, therefore the party must not support these positions. There is a lot of willful blindness that goes on in life. Good for you for breaking free. Not me, but for a couple of family members. That church photo and the events leading up to it. Gas out the street for a photo op with a Bible. You cannot write this stuff. You cannot write this stuff. And if you did write it, Everyone would call you a shitty writer and ask you what you were on when you wrote it. Most ex-Trump supporters just hated Hillary more. True. Source: I was lesser of two evils voter. Thanks. Christian university that made abortion and Supreme Court nominees the entire point of voting. I'll admit was on the maybe fence for a while. I liked the idea that he didn't give a fuck, wasn't being pressured by lobbyists, and had some party agnostic ideas. I'm over it now. He's a textbook demagogue, blames the media if they point out lies, appeals to anger, blames the others, and dances confidently in front of the camera. Moreover, he can't control himself. He reminds me of my dog. Her prey drive is through the roof. If she's off leash, she will bolt after worthless floating shopping bags in the road, even if it means running into traffic and potentially killing herself. This is one of the most apt metaphors of Trump I've ever seen. Demagogue. Demsgag. A political leader who seeks support by appealing to popular desires and prejudices rather than by using rational argument. Because I know some of you haven't brushed up on your ancient Greek and Roman vocabulary or lely. That last image of the shopping bag, that's a hell of a metaphor for our current situation. Except when he runs out into the street, other people die. You misspelled demogorgon. When I started to realize that when he said he was a great businessman, he actually meant he was a great businessman only for his friends around the world in high places. Somebody in another thread said something like, he's managed to make money for the right people to land him where he is. Anyone is a great businessman when they inherit $400 million. Hi_Seas_Pirate 12 points 11 hours ago, edited 8 hours ago. His Atlantic City casinos are a good illustration of this. The short version is that he funded the construction with junk bonds, loans with very high interest rates, and paid himself a salary of a few million out of the loans and a few more million out of what the casino earns. During construction, he would frequently underpay or outright refuse to pay contractors who did work for him. Some would sue and it would work its way through the legal system for years. Others, who couldn't afford the legal expenses for a protracted fight, would just be out the money. After the casinos opened, he kept afloat for a while, but eventually couldn't keep up with the sky-high interest rates on the loans. He has the casinos declare bankruptcy, sells them, and walks. EEATRCMELAs 10:0. Edit. This is mostly about his biggest casino, the Taj Mahal. He actually owned 3 casinos. The Ko, Tal Wo Kilogram, Kome, Ol Latinem Latila, Etlumutae Oral Aralaye. Ag. Happened. He blames every problem on everyone, everything else. Remember when the buck stops here? Well, that's been replaced with I don't take responsibility at all. That's always been the thing. I had an issue with him. He sees being wrong as an unforgivable weakness. I kind of get it. I don't like to be wrong either. But admitting when you have made a mistake and learning from it is quite possibly the best way to make progress and become a lolly CLM Ava LT. I stopped mindlessly agreeing with everything my mom said. Me too. I was newly 18 when I voted. Hadn't really developed my own opinions yet, and basically voted based on what I heard from my parents. I've been going to a lot of protests and doing what I can to help. In part because I feel like it's my responsibility, because I helped get everyone into this mess, and a good amount of the current terrorizing of people who are black and people of color is my fault. I hate the fact that that was my first vote. Originally, I supported Trump in 2016 because I was pressured by members of my family who are very conservative and, to be honest, a little racist. I continued to support him despite what was going on until they moved across the country in 2018. During the big shutdown in 2019, my belief in Trump started to fall in some areas, and I looked more into him and all the nasty shit he was involved in just destroyed my confidence for him. in the past few months. His handling of the pandemic and George Floyd's murder made me hate him. Looking back, I realize I was very wrong and very misguided, and I'll do anything and everything to help get his ass out in November. People who change their mind about something when they learn more are to be admired, not mocked. Good for you. I did vote for Trump in 2016, but I also didn't mind him. I liked some of his concepts more than the actual execution. I still wasn't going to vote for him in 2020, but up until about January I wouldn't be upset if he won. Since then things have changed. His handling of COVID-19 has been horrible. The last few weeks in particular have been a nightmare. His handling of the protests have been an absolute disgrace. Even today he tried to say the 75-year-old man from Buffalo was part of Antifa trying to block police communications. WTF, this is the president. Have any other members of your family changed their minds too? If not, do you think it's something you'd be able to discuss with any of them? I don't know if this counts, but I was Republican when I first came to this country. I voted McCain and Romney in 2008 and 2012. Overall, I saw Obama be a good president. The man was professional and not the mad demagogue socialist everyone pointed him out to be. A bit of bigger government didn't seem that bad to me, since it seemed unchecked private business could wreak havoc in the economy. I was more of a libertarian by 2012, but also realized getting rid of government was not gonna happen. Guns were cool, and so was the right to choose whether or not you can get an abortion. Religion, it seemed to me, was the problem. And then I saw how a relatively small group called the Tea Party took over the GOP, or at least centered its platform on racial, religious and cultural concerns. This concern for culture and race came hand in hand with telling things how it is, or not being politically correct. This made its way into Twitter. I feel this came with the bounds and leaps in Democrat political correctness and freedom, especially with the legalization of gay marriage and open support for the LGBT community, which never bothered me. People should be free to do errand. Soon topics like fiscal policy and smaller government seemed to fade to the back of the agenda. There was a call towards white religious America from the rural areas, and from my POV began exploiting a lack of education with loads of false information. But it was easy to digest, and it was simple to blame the liberals for it. I had always assumed parties would try to work together after an election, but it seemed to me that stopped being the case after 2008. By the time the election came by, I watched how Republican after Republican fell under Donald Trump and the Tea Party politics he represented. Even though the Tea Party had died out by this point, they lost their backbone, and I wasn't about to stand for a party that focused on religion, race and culture, and a lack of political correctness. Especially not to a man who had no decency, decorum, a horrible business track record, and was the greatest liar and con man alive. I hung my Republican hat and took on the role of a Democrat, preaching freedom of choice, government where it counts, infrastructure, environment, education and diplomacy, and a fiscal policy that allows businesses to thrive without unnecessary damage to others and the environment. The people who most represent my views are middle-of-the-aisle Democrats and libertarians who haven't been brainwashed by the alt-right, hating on people for who they are, where they come from to protect some phony religious idea of an American culture just isn't my cup of tea. I was never a supporter so much as a conservative-leaning centrist who didn't see a better option. My last straw was last week. James Mattis, a man I hold in high enough regard that he compares to some of my favorite historic figures, had some choice words about Trump in the past week. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. We are witnessing the consequences. of 3 years of this deliberate effort. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership. It was this statement, combined with Trump using federal troops to violently disband a peaceful protest just so he could have a photo op. I'll 100% be voting Democrat for the first time this year. I have some family who have the same thoughts, by the way. One of them being far more Republican than I ever have been. P.S. I always figured I'd vote Democrat at some point. I just hoped it would have been because they presented a better candidate, not because the GOP sank lower. Just remember, voting Republican or Democrat isn't just a presidential thing. See what the Democrats have nominated for city, state government. See what the Republicans offer. There is, well, makes going to the polls more exciting, as I am sure someone on that list will get you excited to vote. Loud_hyena 1.3k points. One day ago, edited 1 day ago. It was a very rough ride on the Trump train, but the final straw was the agriculture export tariff he put on our goods going to China. We sell our summer wheat to them. Our buyers went to Russia. 4 silos rotted. $3 million United States dollars. Edit. Oh, also forgot this. The China export tariff as well. Cost of friend's business some $28 million in fabrication dealings. They just bought all new tooling to ramp up production. Had to lay off some 100 people they hired to operate the new section. Oh, the tariffs. Wish I could find a clip of him saying that his knowledge of tariffs are perfect. Sorry that happened to you and your friend. Agriculture should never be used as a bargaining chip. Emo. This is serious and not trying to be too mean. But why did it take his actions affecting you directly before you changed your mind? Did you not follow along close enough to see how he was hurting others? Or was it more of a don't care, not me thing? Mine was Charlottesville. Which scandal was this one? Corbin Dallas 2.0k points. 1 day ago, edited 1 day ago. I watched the When They See Us documentary. I was pretty pissed off. Then the Iranian crisis. I really was sitting watching the news waiting for war. When the plan blew up, I was like, here we fucking go. As a member of a family that was killed by their fascist government, the absolute final straw was him talking about shooting civilians and using the military to occupy cities. I will not let the horrors of the 1940s happen here. My grandmother sacrificed a lot to come here. Hell no. When They See Us was fantastic and heartbreaking. I found the role that Trump played in that. EY1. Ale Pisali. A friend of mine voted for him. I argued with him all the time about it and he never really had any explanation for it, except one time he said, I like him because he just doesn't care, like he's the fucking POTUS. Are you kidding me? But he dropped his support after Puerto Rico. He said that was the last straw, seeing him throw paper towels into the crowd like he was playing basketball, cause it showed he obviously didn't care about anyone else at all. I like him because he doesn't care. AADLD I gimme apo erdl t la lati ma lag. Who could have foreseen this? Quote, I just realized POTUS means President of the United States. I honestly don't know how I didn't realize that sooner. So many conversations I've read make sense now. Aggressive Kaizen 14.3k points. 1 day ago. Yes. Just a quick reminder to anyone who successfully convinces someone to change their mind. Be cool about it. If a former Trump supporter says he's no longer their candidate, don't tell them, I told you so. Don't brag about how you knew all along. Say, cool, I think you made the right choice. This goes for life too, but it's especially important in politics. Nobody ever made someone feel good about their choice by making them feel bad that they ever stopped supporting him. And if someone is a Trump supporter, you shouldn't yell at them for being ignorant. Sit down and express your views without demeaning them. I would have never gotten out of the right wing if nobody had the calm discussions I had. Racists will never stop being racists if you feed into their image of the left being angry and dismissive. This is what pisses me off about our politics. A Republican denounces Trump, and you get these gleeful idiots who immediately start shit-talking about how they deserve to go down with him. And Trump is just what the Republican Party has always represented. It's absurdly reductionist. And you know what? Who the fuck cares? They're walking over to your camp, and you want to shank them. Grow the fuck up. Honestly, this has been my mentality for the whole BLM movement. If there are people who don't support it or are actively against, I'd rather start conversations with them as to why they feel that way, rather than sinking to their level of just insulting one another. I was never 100% Trump. Thought he was just charismatic, until I read one of his speeches. Then the impeachments. Then the tear-gassing citizens. Then the calling a 75-year-old victim of police brutality a terrorist. 1 a.m. now anti-Trump. If Democrats added a literal potato to the ballot, I would vote for it. Spud 2020. I wanted the anti-politician. Turns out he is anti-human. Thank you for your insight. I empathize, as the term politician brings to mind a terrible image. And nothing seems as refreshing as an outsider rocking the system. Disruptive can be good. We got destructive instead. An anti-politician would be great if that person was competent and conscientious. He's neither. Bucks Brew Pack in order 794 points 22 hours ago, edited 10 hours ago. For me it was when he made fun of the reporter with a disability. I had a brother with a disability, so that hit close to home. In that moment I realized what a cruel bully he was. And though most evangelicals were touting their loyalty, I noped right off that ticket. Edit spelling. Also, in the years since, and most recently in the past 6 months, I am embarrassed to see so many of my friends continue to blindly support the president. It's shocking, for a guy who said on tape he's never asked God for forgiveness because he doesn't need to get that support over pro-life is astounding. Never mind pro-life after birth. Cage people, demean people, divide people, unleash our armed forces against our own citizens, refuse to model the CDC guidelines, undermine the governors, Tatum Ra AIEIA litter UEM Madala Real IEL Lark TLC TIEA EUM Tellis. I believe his strategy is to divide, and it worked in 2016. But I also believe he's uniting the USA against his tyranny and autocratic dictatorship method of self-aggrandizing narcissism. And, literally the only ones to be shocked at his historic defeat will be himself and his blindly loyal devotees. Edit 2. Clarity. Yes, I am aware it was before the election in 2016. I understood the question to be, what was the last straw? Irrespective of time, I had always been a conservative Republican and would never have dreamed of not voting that way. Until then, I had fully intended to vote for him in 2016, but at the moment his behaviors crystallized to me in a way that have been confirmed time and again since. So I did not vote Trump in 2016. The crazy, and all too common thing, is that all these people would absolutely despise him with murderous wrath if he was 100% identical but a Democrat. I wish I was as confident as you that he won't win. I really get a kick out of the fact people thought they would be getting an actual pro-life advocate in electing Trump. There is no chance. Zero. Zilch. That he has not forced at least one woman to get an abortion in his life. When I heard him bragging about grabbing women's genitals, no Christian, none can support. OAAT Toda TML Khan. My dad is a pastor and is a hardcore Fox News Trump supporter. He yelled at me cause I shared a video comparison of Obama, Trump, and was told I couldn't call myself a Christian if I supported Obama. I said, if being a Christian is supporting Trump, then I don't want any part of it. For the life of me, I cannot figure out why he is still a supporter of him after everything he has said and done. It's like he has blinders on because at least it's not Hillary. It really depresses me. You'd be surprised. I was in the hopeful but not excited category. I'm his first month. He was whining about the inauguration crowds and was insecure that Obama had a larger inauguration crowd than he did. I thought, oh fuck, if he's throwing a tantrum over this when there's serious shit he needs to focus on as president, we're in trouble. And it's been all downhill since then. I just have to comment. Seeing people say they had a last straw gives me hope. I was the person who sadly cried when he got elected. My husband still supports him. It's causing many long days and nights. He finally said he may not vote this election because he doesn't like Biden. It's the most progress I've seen. I'd love advice on this. My boyfriend and I have been living together for 10 years. We have an almost 2-year-old son together. I'm very liberal. He's a Trump supporter. I regret to say, I did not handle our last discussion well. He was trying to read a list of every arrest or bad thing George Floyd ever did. Like he was trying to say the man deserved to be murdered in the street. I started crying and screamed, "You're so wrong. So stupid," and he just marched off. I apologized for losing my temper and calling him stupid once I calmed down. But I've no idea how to deal with this. I can't believe he refuses to see facts. I also live in a very pro-Trump area. I've silenced or removed almost all my Facebook friends. I'm just appalled by it every day. But I know I'm not engaging with them very well. I don't know how to stay calm in the face of such blatant racism and fascism. I can't imagine being anti-Trump and being married to a Trump supporter. Most of my co-workers are Trump fans. They finally admitted he's a horrible human being. They'll probably still will vote for him as they rail against socialism and think it's the same thing as communism, but admitting he's a shitty person is a start. Yes, they all cashed their stimulus. Full TCM. Biden isn't even close to a socialist though. As someone who actually thinks democratic socialism, which is not pure socialism, is a good idea, I wish Biden was more socialist, but he just isn't. Their logic makes no sense. Osmium_knife 290 points 23 hours ago, edited 23 hours ago. Back in February, we were all supposed to be doing a presentation about a historical president. This guy wearing a Confederate flag equivalent to Uncle Sam's suit picks Donald Trump and spends the whole presentation ranting and raving about an crazy old Joe, Nightmare Nancy, and AOC and the Jihad Squad. This kid had also discovered that he could get away with using obscure racial slurs because people didn't realize what he was saying. He was saying things like, "All you spooks and taco heads either need to go back to Africa or accept that Donald Trump is your president." If you've ever seen the video about the kid ranting about fedoras, this was the Donald Trump equivalent. That's when I realized I did not want to be affiliated with that. This was a high school class. The teacher didn't say anything. I'm shocked no one grabbed a desk and threw it at him, threatening to deploy the military against protesters. The only reason the military should ever deploy on U.S. soil is to counter an invasion or armed insurrection that the National Guard couldn't. Lieutenant Tail Rye. This whole George Floyd situation. He is completely ignoring facts behind police brutality and is blindly supporting police. Most of the other things that have happened I haven't had a huge issue with or was kind of on the fence about. But if you're going to advocate for killing protesters, are just looters, I am out. People were protesting a month and a half ago about the corona lockdowns, and most of those people had guns and nothing happened, and it was encouraged by the president. All of a sudden it's about police brutality against unarmed people and he chooses to fight them. Whether he agrees with the protests or not, threatening to kill them is absolutely disgraceful. He's supporting the idea of him being a dictator and trying to control the public by threatening. Liat N. Look. Number 45 showed his colors long before he was elected. Just ask anyone from NY or NJ. Let me list a few instances prior to him taking office where he told us who he is. Let me see. There was the birther issue, where he spearheaded a movement to try and prove Obama was not born in the US. Then there's still the issue of not revealing his income taxes. Next there was the video, quote, saying to just grab women by the pussy, recorded on a bus while on the campaign trail. But when he claimed that he could shoot somebody on St. Avenue and get away with it, that's the epitome of white and money privilege. In the words of Maya Angelou, if someone show you who they are, believe them. He showed us long before he was even nominated or elected. And now, here he is, the actual President of the United States, and I would absolutely be more comfortable having him replaced by an average Saint Raider. 5 months and 20-something days left. Had first supported Trump from the idea that it was kind of satirical he was being placed into such a serious position of power. So really, my support came from seeing how far such mockery America was willing to keep allowing. Well, when someone seriously challenged my thinking about my support for Trump, I had absolutely nothing to say other than, well, it's just funny. I knew I didn't actually support him. When presented with the reality of what he was doing as president, I realized then it was time to grow up and really formulate serious opinions about issues in the world. Still feel like a fool. Maturity is a good thing. Along the lines of the original question, what was the last thing Trump has done that you found? E.g., I think people underestimated this view. There were so many people supporting Trump, ironically because they wanted to meme a president into office. T_D was full of them leading up to the election. I call it the Jesse Camp effect. According to a guy in my office, because of how childish he's been since his inauguration and even more so since the pandemic and Floyd. Uber Sienna 113.1 day ago, edited 7 hours ago. Word for word same reason my colleague gave me too. Edit phrasing, Lana. I didn't like Trump from the start. I voted against him in the primaries, but he won, and so I had to choose between Trump and Hillary. I resented having to pick between two terrible candidates. And I voiced as much any time I got the chance. Anybody with half a brain could see he's a pompous windbag even before the election. The issue with him being a businessman and the fact he would want to run the country like a business was on my mind too. Still, though maybe a huge change from the normal politicians could end up being good, and since I normally vote Republican, I checked the box for Trump. Well, as anybody here can probably tell, my thoughts and fears about Trump have been made manifest in glaring and serious ways. It's not that I made the decisions for not supporting him or not voting for him overnight. It's taken time. The biggest thing that started pushing me away from being able to vote for him a second time was the way he treated allies badly and then treated those that should be enemies well. We have no business dealing kindly with Russia or China, and though he's pushing buttons with China, he has been way too nice to Russia. The constant lies coming out of his office over time have driven me away. I still believe that a person that is president should have integrity. I doubt anybody has even tried to explain to him what integrity is. I don't think he could understand if they did. From firing people that were investigating him or his chosen people to bold-faced lying to the American public. He just isn't presidential. Last straw to CSTERAM-MICLRLMRNUL. UPS La MTAE REIT. American Publican says he did a great job when just about anybody with half a brain can see he flopped it terribly. The only person patting him on the back is him. and maybe faux news. But, at least for a while he was following his medical advisors and they were making decisions that weren't too terrible, until he realized how much money it was costing him and his friends. Then he did a 180 and even forced the CDC, who were all supposed to rely on good medical advice, to change their advice to fit his political agenda. The guy is unstable! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! When dealing with governors he treats them as if they're his employees. It's like he doesn't understand that they're in a more powerful position than he is and they serve the people of their respective state. I've sat and listened to my governor defend Trump, an instance when the news media actually had the wrong information so he cleared it up, even though they're not from the same party, yet Trump still decided to attack the governor and pick a Twitter fight, and almost the very next day, I had already made my mind up there is no voting for Trump, and with most all of the Republican lawmakers making the same mistakes with COVID-19, I've decided I will not vote for one Republican on this November ticket. They've all lost their freaking minds now with their handling of Black Lives Matters and Trump's attack on truth, decency, and the American way. I'm pretty convinced that the Republican Party probably isn't ever going to be for me again anytime soon, and probably ever. If Trump is elected again, I fully expect him to try the Putin dance to become the dictator of our once great America and rename it Trumpland. Well, if Netflix, Tomilia Mura. I think I've just written almost the entire legacy of Trump.